Why is he still saying 150 for Bitcoin? Why do that? Why not just focus on stock? Don't stick your neck out, because it was falling below 60,000. Now it's back to almost 63,000. So that 6 trillion we just talked about, that sort of plays into your Bitcoin thesis.
That's right. Bitcoin's probably suffering from the Mt. Gox, starting distributions in July. That was a huge overhang for many years. But if I was investing in crypto knowing that one of the biggest overhangs is going to disappear in July, I think it's a reason to actually expect a pretty sharp rebound in the second half. So I think 150 is still within.
It's already July 1st, so that's so you're not taking that off the table. That's still a possibility.
That's right. And one thing to keep in mind, Bitcoin makes most of its gains with 10 days every year. If you take out the 10 best days in a single year, Bitcoin actually has negative returns.
What do you think is significant in this electoral cycle about crypto that has the industry so emboldened to make sure that their agenda, whatever that might look like, gets implemented?
Well, there are 52 million Americans who own crypto, and ultimately they've deserved to have a seat at the table. And what we've been able to do as an industry is to create the tools for them to have that seat, be heard, and be a part of the process. And we're pretty excited about the progress that we've made. We've seen candidates up and down the ballot embrace crypto and kind of find their voice on the issue, and that's been very, very gratifying.
There are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking of the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office, the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, to find the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute. And that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it'll depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, But any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all. May God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. May God protect our children.
If, in fact, another nominee were to emerge, is that better or worse for Trump's candidacy here?
Okay, well, let me say, I think another nominee is going to emerge.
You do?
And let me put it in a context that I think people in this program understand. It's imperfect but illuminating. Imagine if a CEO gave that performance in an earnings call. The board of directors would be...
They'd pull him off.
But pull him off. And let's go to the next level of analysis. You're a board of directors. You have a problem like that. Years in advance, at least months in advance, you have to have a succession plan. You always have to have a succession plan. And what do we have here? We have
nothing.
We have nothing.
No plan B.
Plan B.
But that's what Ron Klain's been saying for the past 2 years. There is no plan B. You can't consider, because they wouldn't.
But that's not an acceptance.
They wouldn't allow that.
Imagine if a board of directors said, you know what,
I don't disagree with you.
We have no plan B.
Well, except you could argue that the plan B is that there are, I don't know, half a dozen potential nominees, governors and others in the Democratic Party that maybe could take the place. The question that I'm asking is slightly different, which is what you think that would do to the overall election, and to the extent that there were people out there, voters, who said to themselves, you know what, and I put Bill Ackman potentially in this category, but maybe not. You know, for a long time, he was saying he was very critical of Biden with the hope that a third candidate or another candidate in the Democratic Party would emerge, because he was not necessarily in love with the former president. He is now appears to have switched allegiances and now would say that he is for the former president. The question is, if another person came in to replace Biden in this sort of A/B test that Peter Thiel talks about, where with all of a sudden, if the A is a different human, do they say, okay, actually, I'm now, the whole thing is scrambled?
Okay, so of course you will be changing the context. You change the person, you change the context. Absolutely. I think the question for the American people, and look, I think, here's what I think. Why do I think he's going to change out? Because the American people are smart. And the market is the American people. And just like in the CEO situation, the market is going to tell them that they have to change.
Jay, you just heard how difficult that is, that you will then have a person who's never run a national election, who's got 2 months to try and run it. You figure this is just a Hail Mary sort of pass. They figure they can't win otherwise, and so they give it a...
I have no idea what's going on, but you usually give somebody who's in a position of authority to come to the conclusion on their own. My hope is that what's happening is we're giving Joe Biden, who deserves a lot for his public service.
Does Trump win the battle but lose the war then? Is that what you're saying? Because that's the interesting part, right? He could have won the debate, but if you're telling me that then the whole dynamic changes, then you lost the war.
Let me go back to, again, the context I know, which is the corporate context. You've built a strategy around one set of facts. We are going to scramble the eggs, right? And the Trump campaign will have to build a new strategy depending on how this unfolds and who falls into that position.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
And make sure you join the Patrons. If you're not a part of the Patrons, make sure you're hitting the Cash App. And we have Tom Lee says that Bitcoin can hit 150,000 by year end. And guys, you know what I always tell you time after time. We no longer have to worry about predictions. The only thing we have to do is watch the Fed, these central banks. We do know the BRICS are eventually going to flip that switch this year. But we will get that signal. And then we have these crypto PACs using funding to make sure these politicians are in favor of crypto. And we know the politicians are nothing but paid puppets. And then, guys, we have Biden putting on a show. We had an article come out about the 25th Amendment. Guys, you can't make this stuff up. Now, Biden says a Supreme Court verdict that gives the president immunity says the president is now a king. And guys, this is going to go above a lot of people's heads. If you have my NWO book, you understand. We don't have nobility for a reason. But Biden says no one is above the law, including the president. And we know that is definitely not true. We know the banks are the biggest what? I'll let you finish that. But getting back to the 25th Amendment, we have Jay Clayton says another nominee will emerge. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. started off as a Democratic nominee and then switched to independent. And basically, if he moves back, teams up with Kamala, they're definitely going to win. And remember, the Cryptoteacher told you. But if RFK Jr. stays an independent, Trump will have an easy win. But guys, we know when it comes to the movie, it's never easy. Remember, presidents are selected, not elected. And we have CNBC talking about China's economy. It's tanking. And guys, we know that is definitely not true. Says that China is going to be producing excess goods and then flood the market. And remember, Janet Yellen was over there trying to stop them from producing so many goods. And of course, by them producing so many goods, the global consumer can get these products for cheap. Why do you think all of the big United States corporations were over there in the first place? So therefore, they could get cheap goods. But now the average consumer can buy directly from China and get these cheap goods, bypassing these big corporations. That's the reason why Temu, Shein, taking a lot of market share. But remember, guys, the end game. The end game is the fourth industrial revolution. And right now, Americans are being conditioned right now. With inflation, they're buying what they need, not what they actually want. And due to technology, we're going to have less and less surplus because they're going to know what you want before you even know it, based on data. And that's the reason why these AI algorithms are so important. They're going to know you better than you know yourself. And remember, the Cryptoteacher told you, because he knows when it comes to the NWO, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
We've seen this before from China, but you say that this is unprecedented in both the scale and the scope of what they are undertaking this time around. You want to explain?
Sure, and thank you so much for attention to this. Essentially, the Chinese economy is tanking right now. And Xi Jinping, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, has decided that to reinvigorate the Chinese economy, he's going to double down in an old Chinese playbook for economic reform, so to speak, which is overproducing goods far in excess of what internal demand requires, and then exporting the surplus to other countries at a price designed to undercut the competition and really destroy it. And so he's doing this across a range of goods, including goods in strategic sectors that they have decided that they want to dominate, from everything from semiconductors to shipbuilding to drones and so forth.
I think some of the numbers kind of jump out. I've heard Janet Yellen has talked about this, the Secretary of the Treasury, has talked about how all of the money that was previously being spent on infrastructure on China has been funneled into this. And the numbers kind of back that up. 4 years ago, there was $83 billion that China spent on new lending for industry. That skyrocketed, you say, to $670 billion. And those are numbers that are coming from the Bank of China.
Yeah, these are astronomical numbers. Just take one example, which we highlighted in our hearing the other day, shipbuilding. Essentially, China is building 359 new ships for every one ship that the United States builds. And that points out two problems. One is they are building far more ships than their internal demand requires. But secondly, the U.S. has ceded leadership in global shipbuilding, and that impacts our national security as well. So we have to fix both of those issues.
It's not just one application. It's not just a chat bot that you can put on your website and have talk to your customers, which is a very cool application, by the way. But many customers, if they stop there, they're not going to get the true value out of what this technology is bringing to them. We want a set of services that'll help customers be able to build guardrails. They can build safe applications, combine multiple models together, where it's not just one model that's going to give them the best performance. It's going to be sometimes a small model and a big model and a variety of different providers that are bringing models together. It's capabilities like associating it with your enterprise data and a RAG index so that you can make sure that you have sources of truth when you're trying to answer questions. And when we look across our customer set, it's not just chatbots. We have folks like Pfizer who are actually using generative AI to help them do drug discovery. And they estimate it saves AWS and Bedrock, which is our service that kind of helps you build these applications, save them over $1 billion this year in going and building and finding new drugs.
Going to a different economy. And we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
And so we'll import Chinese-based CBDC technology. So it's going to be CBDC in a box provided to you by the People's Bank of China.
But every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every piece of art, every private business, every piece of real estate will eventually be a token on a blockchain, an entry on a ledger, permanent and immutable. We will have truth instead of trust, and we will save over $7 trillion a year. 6 to 8% of global GDP is wasted by the friction of the trust industry that's necessary when you have dual entry accounting. With triple entry accounting, which is what a blockchain is, we get rid of all of that friction. It's a beautiful future.
Like what you see in China and their social credit scoring systems, right? If we get identity wrong, it could be a tool to enslave humanity. And if we get it right, it could be a tool to liberate humanity. And as an American, I'm obviously rooting for the one that's on the side of freedom.
Bitcoin is an international asset. And also, I do believe the role of crypto is it's digitizing gold.
I actually believe this technology is going to be very important. Look at it. We have been part of a huge revolution in investing through ETFs. We believe that ETFs will be changing the whole way we invest. Many people still use it as a means, people are investing it for indexing. No, the majority of people who are putting money in in ETFs are active investors that are buying exposure. The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. And if we can have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem.
Chinese bank ICBC has been hit by a ransomware attack, and the U.S. Treasury market, as a result of that, has been disrupted. This, according to the Financial Times. We're getting it more right now with Bloomberg's Shonali Bassick. Shonali, what do we know?
Listen, we have the Financial Times now reporting that ICBC, one of China's largest banks here, was hit with a ransomware attack. And remember, they're a very significant intermediary in the Treasury market. The SIFMA has told its members that this has been part of the reason here that the system is kind of clogged up, if you will, during that auction that we saw a little bit before. The attack had prevented ICBC, according to the Financial Times, from settling Treasury trades on behalf of other market participants. A large executive at a major bank also telling the paper that such a large party on the fixed income clearing corp creates major concerns, potentially impacting the liquidity of Treasury markets.
Now, it was not just a poor auction. It was absolutely lousy, and when the dealers have to step in to save a treasury auction, that's a rare occurrence. And
Cryptoteacher and the New World Order book, plus the 3 Kids books. It's time to re-educate. Also, new to cryptos: Coinbase, Bitrue, Binance, Do not forget book links and crypto links are in the description. The stock channel, guys. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, spread everywhere. You have your Kobo, your chip stocks, your banking, your gaming. While everybody's sitting at home, get on stocks, the Seaver, the biotech stocks. And while everybody's at home wishing they were still getting that free money, what are they doing? Drinking and smoking weed. Don't forget about those stocks, and you have a wonderful day. The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids books. You know I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate. Not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID-33. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.